Hello, my name is Geovianna Geraldine, and I will be presenting my CHM video presentation on chemical bonds. So, in chemical bonding refers to the formation of chemical bond between two or more atoms, molecules, or ions to give rise to a chemical compound. These chemical bonds are what keep the atoms together in the resulting compound. So today I will be explaining three things. That is Lewis theory of chemical bonding, Costell's theory of chemical bonding, and types of chemical bonds. So in the Lewis theory of chemical bonding, according to Gilbert Lewis, an atom can be viewed as positively charged kernel. That is the nucleus plus the inner electrons and the outer shell. The outer shell can be accommodate a maximum of 8 electrons only. The 8 electrons present in the outer shell occupy the corners of cube which surround the kernel. The atoms also have an octet configuration, which means that 8 electrons in the outermost shell have symbolizing a stable configuration. Atoms can achieve this stable configuration by forming chemical bonds with other atoms. This chemical bond can be formed either by gaining or losing an electron, that is such as sodium chloride or magnesium chloride, or in some other cases due to the sharing of an electron. Only the electrons present in the outer shell, also known as the valence electron, take part in the formation of chemical bonds. Gilbert Lewis used specific notations better known as Lewis symbols to present these valence electrons. For example, Lewis symbol for lithium that only has 1 electron, oxygen 6 electrons, and neon 8 electrons. As you can see in the diagram, there are the number of dots that surround the respective symbol represents the number of valence electrons in that atom. So you can see that lithium has only 1 electron, oxygen only has 6, and neon has 8 electrons. So that is the Lewis theory of chemical bonding. Next is we have Costell's theory of chemical bonding. In Costell's theory, noble gases separate the highly electronegative halogens and the highly electropositive alkali metals. Halogens can form negatively charged ions by gaining an electron, whereas alkali metals can form positively charged ions by losing an electron. These negatively charged ions and positively charged ions have noble gas configuration, that is 8 electrons in the outer shell. The general electronic configuration of noble gases, except helium, is given by Ns2NP6, as unlike charges attract each other. These unlike charged particles are held together by a strong force of electrostatic attraction existing between them. For example, magnesium chloride, magnesium ions, and chloride ions are being held together by the force of electrostatic attraction. This kind of chemical bonding existing between two unlike charged particles is known as electrovalent bond. Next, I will be talking about types of chemical bonds. When substances participate in chemical bonding and yield compounds, the stability of the resulting compound can be gauged by the type of chemical bonds and it contains. The type of chemical bonds formed varies in strength and properties. There are 4 primary types of chemical bonds which are formed by atoms or molecules to yield compounds. These types of chemical bonds include ionic bonds, covalent bonds, hydrogen bonds, and polar bonds. These types of bonds in chemical bonding are formed from the loss, gain, or sharing of electrons between two atoms or molecule. First is ionic bonding or ionic bond. So ionic bonding is a type of chemical bonding which involves a transfer of electrons from one atom or molecule to another. Here, an atom loses an electron, which is in turn gained by another atom. When such an electron transfer takes place, one of the atoms develops a negative charge and is now called the anion. The other atom develops a positive charge and is called the cation. The ionic bond gains strength. From the difference in charge between two atoms, the greater the charge disparity between the cation and the anion, the stronger the ionic bond. Next is covalent bond. A covalent bond indicates the sharing of electrons between atoms. Compounds that contain carbon, also called organic compounds, commonly exhibit this type of chemical bonding. The pair of electrons which are shared by the two atoms now extend around the nuclei of atoms, leading to the creation of molecules. Polar covalent bonding. Covalent bonds can be either polar or nonpolar in nature. In polar covalent chemical bonding, electrons are shared unequally since the more electronegative atom pulls the electron pair closer to itself and away from the less electronegative atom. Water is an example of such a polar molecule. A difference in charge arises in different areas from the atom due to the uneven spacing of the electrons between the atoms. One end of the molecule tends to be partially positively charged, and the other end tends to be partially negatively charged. Next is hydrogen bonding. Compared to ionic and covalent bonding, hydrogen bonding is a weaker form of chemical bonding. It is a type of polar covalent bonding between oxygen and hydrogen, wherein the hydrogen develops a partial positive charge. This implies that the electrons are pulled closer to the more electronegative oxygen atom. This creates a tendency for the hydrogen to be attracted towards the negative charges of any neighboring atom. This type of chemical bonding is called a hydrogen bond and is responsible for many of the properties exhibited by water. That is all for me. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope you enjoy my presentation.